Good afternoon. This is Crystal Reed Heath, the Chief Strategist and CEO of Capital Consulting Strategies, and I am delighted to be with you today to engage with you a discussion about civic engagement, the third part, where I'll be sharing with you research strategies. Be sure to join our discussion on Facebook at Where's Your Strategy, and then our Twitter and Instagram handles are at My Capital Firm. And then also this video will be posted on YouTube after our discussion. Simply search for Capital Consulting Strategies. Today, I'll provide a very brief overview of last week's session where we talked about strategies for building effective coalitions. If you missed that, it's posted on YouTube, so be sure to search for Capital Consulting Strategies and find that information, as today's topic of research strategies really builds on last week's topic and the week before, where we talked about effective strategies for developing your message. So if you missed it, there are some great topics on how to build a 2793, but then also information on how to effectively construct your message juxtaposed to your opposition's message using a tool from Dr. Paul Tully. So go back and look at the information if you missed it, and be sure to catch up. So as mentioned before, we've talked about building coalitions and building clear and consistent communications and the types of communication one should use when seeking to articulate their message. Today, we'll really focus on doing your homework. So though you can have a great cause and a great initiative, if you can't support your facts assertively through quantitative information, then you lose credibility and you may not be able to effectively advance your cause. So it's important that you do your homework and that you also cite your information if you used a reference or a resource. So that's an important strategy to take away. So before you begin doing research, it's important that you know your message, because knowing your message will enable you to know the pros and the cons from an opposition perspective, so you can preempt any type of negative messages, but then also it will help you to know what points of your message do you need to find quantitative or qualitative information to support your assertions, and it will give you additional clarity, and it will also reinforce your message and provide additional credibility when you're seeking to convince others who perhaps are unfamiliar with your issue or maybe on the fence about whether or not they should support your initiative. So in doing so, it's important that you engage in comprehensive research. And as part of that, the components are qualitative, quantitative, and then also the importance of opposition research. So in qualitative research, let's say, for example, you are advocating on behalf of children in foster care, something I've done before. And it's important that you actually have examples of the population that you're working with to tell their story, because although you can go and you can find research on the numbers of individuals that are in foster care or outcomes, that's important too. And we'll talk about the importance of quantitative information, but sometimes a story can better tell your message than having research. And so when I look at qualitative and quantitative data, they really do go hand in hand. The qualitative data will really describe and provide illustrative purposes to your audience if they're unfamiliar with your issue. So for example, when I worked with Foster Club and the Pew Charitable Trust, first as an intern and then as a consultant, we did research and engaged youth in foster care to really ensure that we had adequate stories to share. So as part of that, you would want to engage individuals that had an experience with the particular issue that you're advocating for. And so as part of that process, youth in foster care went to Capitol Hill and actually spoke to members of Congress. And as part of our collaboration, the Pew Charitable Trust presented a birthday card to members of Congress that said "Happy Birthday" with a question mark. And on the inside of it, it had the quantitative data that we talked about. So for each day of a person's inactivity, a child in foster care had a birthday. And so we were able to tie the quantitative data, meaning the number of youth in foster care and their outcomes, to a qualitative component, meaning for every day of your inactivity, a child has a birthday in foster care. So that example combined both qualitative and quantitative data where we're able to relate to members of Congress, because whether we like birthdays or not, we all can relate to having a birthday. And so it personalized the story or the message. And that's an example, and that's a way of how you can take both personal stories and interviews, but also reinforce that message with having empirical data and research to support your message. And then also, it's important that you understand opposition research and the importance of it, because if you're advocating for your position, there usually is going to be an opponent or a differing side. So it's important that you not only know your message, but that you know the message of your opponent so that you can preempt any type of negative story that may surface as a result of your advocacy. And as part of that, it's important to do it from an objective perspective that is persuasive. So you want to present a fair and balanced perspective of the pros and cons of your position and then the pros and cons of your opponent's position, because and in so doing, you won't come across as being biased, but as one who would have given thoughtful consideration to the holistic impact of whatever you're seeking to do. And so I'm certainly not suggesting that you advocate on your opponent's behalf, but I am suggesting that you take the time to do the research to understand the counterpoints and the counter arguments that may be arrived upon when you're advocating for your position. And there's ways to do this. So very practically, if you're looking at introducing a piece of legislation, or perhaps your bill has already been introduced, then you can go and look and actually read the bill and look at any type of testimony or hearing that may have already been given, and then use that as a basis for the type of narrative that will be used in any potential possible opposition. Then you can also go back and look in previous legislative sessions to see if a similar measure was opposed to your legislation, and then do the research. And actually, this is where your qualitative piece comes in. You can go in and talk to previous members that may have supported a counter bill to yours and really get their perspective so you can understand how best to frame and shape your message. And where possible, use the strategies we talked about last week to build effective coalitions for someone that may be opposing your position. So once you've taken the time to do the qualitative research, the quantitative research, you've done opposition research, and then you've also taken the time to look back from a historical perspective about similar bills or similar measures that may have been introduced and looked at their trajectory or their disposition, then it's time to analyze all of that data. And so the analysis is really important, because if you're not able to tell a story with either the quantitative or the qualitative data that you have already acquired, then all of it is for naught. So the analysis needs to be done in such a way that you can produce either a policy analysis or a policy brief, or one pager that shows the pros and cons of the legislation that you're seeking to pass or engage. But then also it should show really a comprehensive, in academic field we call it a literature review, but a comprehensive overview to include economics and finances with regard to its implications if it passes, and then what populations it affects, because this one pager gives the person that you're advocating to, perhaps a legislator or someone that may be unfamiliar with your issue, a comprehensive overview of what it is that you're seeking to do. And so that analysis is really important, and we specialize in doing comprehensive policy analyses and policy briefs to help you clarify and articulate your message. And as I referenced with the birthday card, it's important that after you've done the analysis and that you've done the research, that you develop collateral that actually tells your story. That's really important. So you can do all of the research, but if it's not positioned in such a way that accurately and clearly depicts your message, then all of it's for naught. So the best example I can give you is to take a complex topic and boil it down to its most simplistic form. So if we go back to our topic where we talked about a 2793, 27 words that you can say in 9 seconds or 3 core points. You should have that for each of your positions that you're advocating for. And then you should also have the research to support those positions, and then also to preempt any type of counter narrative that develops as a result of your advocacy. As mentioned before, Capital Consulting Strategies is a premier strategy consulting firm which specializes in strategy for political, business, and marketing areas. But then also, specifically as it relates to this topic, we would be delighted to help you with your political strategy and research. And so on the research side, we certainly could help you do the historical analysis and look at previous types of legislation that has been introduced, look at previous members that may have sponsored legislation, but then also doing the empirical research to help you best articulate your message and develop one-page policy analyses and policy briefs. We'd be just delighted to do that for you. But then also from a more holistic perspective, research is but one piece of political strategy. So when you're developing your counter narrative, it's important that you look ahead, and although research is a primary function of political strategy, you want to take a comprehensive approach, and you'd like to have a plan so we could help you develop your political strategy and the marketing efforts that would be required for the outreach. And then we also have a call center that if you're looking to survey a target audience to understand the implications of a bill, or if you needed to gather data, we could help you with telephone surveys or also virtual surveys as well. Again, I am Crystal Reed Heath, the Chief Strategist and CEO of Capital Consulting Strategies. My contact information and website is listed before you. If you have any questions, I would be just delighted to hear from you. I hope that you have a wonderful weekend.